Mr. President, I believe we have a special guest.
Very special guest. We're fortunate to have Assemblymember Brian Dahle here with us this morning. A farmer, a father, a trophy husband to a delightful Megan. He cut his teeth on a tractor and is a board member of the Lassen County Board of Supervisors for 16 years, where he showed his public servant side by proposing to Megan in a public meeting. Aw, yeah. And he provided an anchor for this conservancy in the northern parts of California for 6 years, and I'm honored to introduce a fellow colleague here at the Conservancy and a rising star in the north, Brian Dahle.
Can you hear me? Well, good afternoon. First off, I'd like to introduce Lindsay Burkhart-Lehman, who is shadowing me today. She's beautiful and she's smart, and I don't know how she ended up with me, but she must have drew the wrong straw out. But so she's been learning about PERS. She's been learning about the new global warming bill that's going to be coming through this year with the cap and trade. And so we're here today to talk to you folks. I want to just real quick, I'm gonna just use Izzy's conversation as a springboard, because I believe that she covered a lot of ground in the areas of the Conservancy and where I believe. For those of you in the audience that don't know me, and on the new board members, I am a third generation farmer. I live in this area my whole life. My family homesteaded in Siskiyou County in 1930, and we continue to farm those same lands, and we're trying to make some sense of what's going on in our environment. And as was stated earlier about the land ownership, I want to just draw a picture here for you that Izzy's exactly right. I get my mail in the town of Bieber. I don't know if many of you know that, just like Justin Bieber, but it's there's about 300 people in that town if everybody shows up on the same day. And we used to have 3 sawmills in our little community. We still have agriculture, but you know, my grandfather in 1942 bought a piece of property in Lassen County there, and he had 7 children, and those 7 children plus hired help managed that farm. Today we still operate that same piece of land, myself and my 2 sons and 1 full-time employee. And if I wasn't here in Sacramento, I wouldn't need a full-time employee, and I could do it without my sons probably too. And I say that because our communities used to have a lot of people in them, and we used to have our schools thrived, and there was a lot of folks working. And that's not the case today. The case today is, you know, I have a harvester that can harvest 100 acres a day when it used to take my grandfather 3 weeks to do that. And technology is changing rural California and rural America. And it's not going to change. We used to, you know, the lumber mill I worked in when I got out of high school cut about 65 to 70,000 board feet a day with 50 men there. A mega mill today will cut 500,000 board feet with 9 people. That's the reality we're in. And it's not going to change. We have to be competitive. We have to stay in business. But our resource out there is desperately in need of some management. And as you all know, the time I spent on this board, I talked a lot about how we're going to, what the connection is. So I actually came to Sacramento thinking I was going to make a big difference in telling the story of, you know, the farmer from Bieber. And I have made some progress, but we have a long ways to go. And so I want to just share with you what I've been doing in the last 5 years since I left your board, and try to use that as an opportunity to maybe convince some of the lawmakers in California that the Sierras are the backbone of this state, and they're in a desperate need for some attention. So in the 5 years that I've been in the state legislature, I've had 80 members of the legislature to my district. Now my district takes in Shasta, Siskiyou, Lassen, Modoc, Plumas, Sierra, part of Butte, all Nevada, and part of Placer. So I have 7 full counties and parts of 2 others. So the most the biggest part of the watershed for the state of California comes out of my districts, 25,000 square miles. So we have some really cool places like Lake Tahoe. We have 2 volcanoes. We have Fall River, where a river just comes out of the ground. We have wild trout. It's beautiful. So I have a lot of beautiful areas to bring these folks to. And along with a lot of the business folks up there have helped me try to bring these members out. And when we get those members out, we partner with people like Izzy and the Sierra Fund. We had the Black Caucus to Lake Tahoe, and we talk about what's happening in our forest. That, you know, the Smokey the Bear campaign really wasn't the greatest thing for the forest because fire actually did its job and thinned our forest, and we stopped that. So we created the problems that we have in the Sierras, along with the change in climate is really impacted. So when we bring those legislators out there, we talk about why they should care if you're from central LA, what happens in the Sierras. It's because when I had Reggie Jones Sawyer, who represents USC in Compton, 65% of his water comes out of the Sierras. Either it comes down the east side through the Owens Valley, or it comes down our side and down through the valley and up over the Grapevine. And that's why he should care about what happens in the Sierras. So we have had those members out on the ground talking to them about why the Sierras are important to the whole state of California. As you know, there's a big debate about climate change, and cap and trade is going to be the biggest bill of this session. And there's going to be a lot of money to be taxed or levied off of how we end up coming out with this legislation. But more importantly, we need to educate the legislators that are going to be making these decisions on how we should spend those resources. And I will always continue to advocate that the forest is the #1 priority. And I say that because dead trees emit carbon and methane, and live trees sequester carbon. Unfortunately, we have too many trees out there that are competing for the moisture, and as you know, you've heard it 1,000 times, now we have about 102 million trees that have bark beetle, and that's just going to continue to climb. So time is of the urgency, and these are difficult issues. We are going to see mega fires. There's no way we could, if we had the infrastructure in place and all the money at our fingertips, we couldn't keep up with the pace and scale that we need to be at, but we're desperately behind. I'm hoping that our partners, as Izzy mentioned, the Forest Service, are able to, and then we can educate our federal leaders on what needs to happen, not just in California, but in the western United States. There was a map that came out a couple of years ago about carbon, and what the #1 emitter in the world is forest fire. And I would venture to say the western United States is one of the largest contributors. Our policies have put us in a place where we're way behind the curve, and we need to mechanically thin those forests so that fire can do what it can do. So with that, I will say I appreciate what you do here. I will advocate for you always. I love you guys. You are my people. And I made a promise to Megan that I will stay running for this office, even though there's a lot of days I want to go home and just try to be a farmer. But the reason I stay here is not just for my own reasons for my farm, but I desperately care about California. This is the greatest state in the nation. In the world, this place is awesome. We're going to change the world by our technology, and we're going to change it by our policies. But we got to lead, and we got to prioritize where we strike first. And right now, it's fire is the #1 enemy for the Sierras, and we need to get our hands around it. So again, thank you. I'm open for questions if you'd like to give me any. But I got 8 more years on this sentence, and I'll stay here until they run me out.
So thank you, Brian. It's great to see you. Any questions for the Assembly Member Dahle?
Oh, you guys are easy.
Oh, come on. Put his toes to the fire, someone. Anyway, thank you.
Okay.
Carry on. We'll be in touch.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, thank you again, Assemblyman Dahle. It's great to have him in the legislature and have somebody who's getting things done. I know it's frustrating, but we appreciate everything you've done and continue to do, so we really appreciate you being here.